Awesome. All right. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here tonight for the presentation on harmonizing your hormones. And I'm just about to get your first slide up. Harmonizing the hormones, and we're doing part 1 tonight. And my name is Brenda Rogers, and I'm the Young Living Training Manager and various other things. So first of all, I really would like for you to have note, paper and pen, if at all possible. Or if you're modern, then perhaps notes on your phone or notes on your computer if you can do that at the same time. But I would like you to take notes from today, and there might be keywords in what I'm talking about that interest you, so that you can go and look further into the information that I'm giving you, because there's ginormous amount of information on hormones, and I've struggled to even break it down into something that's I can present in 45 minutes or so. So some of it I'll be skimming over, and you may want a reference to go back to. And so please write down notes. You'll need notepad and pen. I also want you to ask lots of questions so that I can tailor this to exactly what you need. And I'm going to ask you questions as well, so we can work on this together, which will be fantastic. All right. So first of all, I want to highlight for you the oils and Young Living supplements that really are a feature around this topic. So these I'll keep going back to. These are the ones that I'd like you to research in your own time in greater detail, and find good solid information on their practical uses and benefits, because these are the ones that you're going to be interested in if this is an area of interest for you, which you're here on this online training. So I imagine it is something that you're interested in. So first of all, the singles. And look, there's lots and lots of oils. I've just selected my key favorite ones here. And so I'm going to show those to you. You might want to write them down. And first of all, frankincense. Now, frankincense has is featured commonly in some of the products and supplements that relate to this area of hormones. And I do think of it as kind of a master product or a master oil in many senses. And we have that sort of equivalent in our body. So the master glands, the master chakra, whatever your inclination is regarding that. And so I find frankincense one of those key ones that you'll find important to research in this area. Geranium is another one. Beautiful, simple geranium, also a key one for women's and men's well-being. Fennel is another one. Fennel is used traditionally as a herb in many of the hormonal-related conditions or hormonal-related applications. And so fennel is something to look at. Clary sage, in fact, clary sage and sage are really important. Lavender, and then if in doubt, lavender. Lavender is another oil that has lots of applications, and even from the effect of balancing or soothing and calming us, can be very beneficial to our whole hormonal system, as you will see as we go along. Now, just a few blends that I'd like to highlight here as well. First of all, 3 Wise Men. And you'll see that frankincense oil is in 3 Wise Men. And I have it diffusing tonight because of it's such a fantastic formula with the sandalwood, the myrrh, frankincense. Its key words are really about, I would say, the higher chakras, awareness and awakening. And it's just one of those ones to consider in more detail. And then, of course, we have the Progessence Phyto Plus, something that you, if you're not aware of already, you definitely want to look into. Dragon Thyme, another one that is particularly good for women during their cycle. Endoflex, another one that some people aren't aware of. Actually, this one smells very beautiful, so it's one to consider as a fragrance, a perfume, if you like, to wear on your body during the day. That spearmint flavour is quite lovely. It's another one to consider. Endoflex, endo relating to endocrine perhaps, and something to investigate for yourselves. And then Lady Sclariol, also another beautiful women's blend, and also has that fragrance benefit as well. But have a look into the ingredients in that, geranium being the first one, and so on. Another one, Sclarescence, containing clary sage as the primary ingredient. So there we go back to one of our core oils. Mister is worth looking at as well, not just for men, but for women as well. So I encourage you to investigate that one. Have a look at what's in it. Sage, fennel, lavender, fantastic formula. And I think particularly for women who may have a little more male energy than they really want. So if you get my drift. And then I think the Feelings Kit is an amazing combination of oils to have on hand to research and learn about in the area of managing hormonal health. And then some supplements to look at is, and I know you're asking me questions about stock levels, and I don't know. So the short answer is I don't know, and when we know, we will let you know immediately. So please look out for that. Now, a couple of supplements to consider. These are the go-to ones to keep coming back to. I hope you're writing these down. Prostate health is obviously something that we think of because of the name of it, but is also very good for women. So do investigate the female applications of saw palmetto, for example. Can be amazing for some of those conditions out there where there's a reproductive hormone imbalance. And then once again, look at the oils in there: geranium, fennel, lavender. So awesome. Omega Gi's being an anti-inflammatory, a natural anti-inflammatory, and many hormonal conditions being exacerbated by inflammation. Mineral essence containing essential minerals for our bodies and also for our herbs, for our hormones particularly. Sulfazyme, one of my go-to favorites, one of those daily ones to look at. Have a look at sulfazyme, research sulfur and estrogen levels, for example, and liver detoxification, which we're going to look at in a little while. And then, of course, Ninja Red being that beautiful berry-rich infusion and part of your daily routine, something I put in my smoothie in the mornings because it's so lovely. And now let's have a look. So that's our go-to refer to products that you want to consider. I hope you got to write those down so you can look into applying them to some of the things that we're going to be discussing. So now let's talk a bit about hormones in the endocrine system. First of all, I would really like to know why you're here on this call, what you would like to know, what had you go, yes, I want to attend this training and learn more, because I want to be able to apply this information to what you're after as well. So please just type in, and I'm going to take some notes. Estrogen dominance, fantastic. And fertility, okay, great. Teens, oh wow, teens. Osteoporosis, yep, okay. Menopause, yeah, menopause. Endo, endometriosis, PCOS. Wait, you're going too fast. Oh my gosh. That's all right, I can scroll back up. Hold on. Well, hormone balancing. Yep, we'll definitely be talking about that. Get my mouse to work. Let me go back up. Sorry. Okay, difference between sclerescence, progescence plus, and lady sclereal. Yeah, I'll see what I can do with that. Minimize pimples. Okay, pimples, hormonal pimples. I think you'll find that out, Jordan. Where's my mouse gone? Postmenopause, perimenopause. So all things menopause related. Okay, dryness, yes, vaginal dryness, kind of a symptom of menopause often. Not having her period again after 3 years or not, wondering what might be good for her. Okay, so you're looking at being able to share this with others and help others, obviously. Cramps, okay, yep, cramps. Prevent, how to balance hormones to prevent, I think that's unmentionable health issues, is it? Migraines, yep, okay. You're studying hormonal health, Irina. Okay, great, additional knowledge. PCOS, oh, my mouse keeps disappearing. Period pain, replacement for progescence, well, that's dragon time, really. Increasing progesterone, okay, so increasing progesterone. Teenagers, hormones and moods and overall health, moodiness, skin health, wow. Just want to make sure your body's balanced, stable mood, studying naturopathy. Sandra, fantastic. Hormone balancing, hormones and weight gain. Yes, we'll talk about weight gain. Migraine. Gosh. Migraine, fibroids, hair loss. Thinning hair. Fibroids. Right. High estrogen, yep, estrogen dominance. Menopause. Menopause doesn't have to be misery. High estrogen, weight loss, libido, happy menopause, vertigo. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think that's enough for the moment. You can always add more. I will print out all the comments at the end. So if you're happy to put in information and questions, I may not get to talk to them about them today, but I will use them as feedback and research for part 2. So please type in things that you would like to know, and I will do my best to address them. So let's have a look at what the medical definition of a hormone is. So what I'd like to do today is really give you a lot of information, background information, so that you can really understand how you can help people with hormones. And this, as I mentioned, is part 1. So I want to first start off with some definitions, some concepts before we get into actual conditions. So I think that will help you greatly. So just to give you a definition of the hormones, the medical definition of a hormone is that it's a messenger of your body. So hormones are messengers. Now we have messengers in the form of chemicals that come from our nervous system as well, such as adrenaline, for example, which could be considered part of that messenger as well. So there's other messengers in the body, but the nervous system ones tend to be short term and the hormonal ones tend to be kind of longer term. So they are slightly different. So each hormone sends specific instructions to every organ and helps determine your mood, energy level, weight, temperature, digestion, and many other aspects of health. So some people just think of hormones, and we're talking about hormones just being reproductive hormones. But in fact, there's a lot more, which we're going to, I'm going to show you in a little while. So here's what some of the sort of, if you look at this image quite closely, you'll get a little bit of a chuckle, because you'll see men at the top there, and this relates, I think, quite specifically to reproductive aspects. But man is one switch, and look at us ladies, we're a little bit more complicated. So it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, we are more complicated because we have the whole 28-day cycle thing going on. So it does make us more complex. But if you take what I'm trying to do today, which is to give you sort of a bigger picture overview, background concepts, then correction for that and balancing of that is actually quite simple. So we can get really hung up in labeling conditions, trying to identify specific things that are going wrong with the body, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. We want a blood test to be able to tell us if our estrogen's low or estrogen's high, or our hormones are in, our TSH is where that's at in range or out of range, for example. We really want that information because it's very helpful. But ultimately, the things that we do often to correct and to get back to health are very simple. It's back to basics. So just remember that. Keep it simple. We're going to get complex tonight, but always come back to simplicity. Hormones are, and I want you to remember this and even write it down, hormones are a reflection of our overall general health. So if they're out of balance, it's information. It's the body speaking to us saying something's not right. We're out of balance. We've got to get back on track. And you might not even know what that is, but the first thing, if you're identifying that your body's telling you you're off track, then you can start to look at least, what can I do to get back into balance? What am I doing that's undermining my general health? And those kind of questions really help people understand what is missing from their life or what they need to correct. And even if you're trying to help someone else, say you're a Young Living member who is wanting to share the Young Living products, you have a business, for example, then these questions will help people take responsibility and identify things in their life that they can action, and that can be really, really empowering. Make sense? Okay, just checking your comments. Help balancing pancreas. Yep, boys are hard. Teenage boys. Okay, so I'll address some of those questions as we go along. Things that I miss, as I mentioned, I'll look at and address next time as well. So first of all, I want to just talk a little bit about that limiting explanation that we have of hormones from our kind of mainstream medicine. They are messengers. Hormones are messages, but they are so much more. And I would really like to just have a brief discussion with you about some of the other concepts that come into this area when we start talking about hormones. So if hormones are the messengers, and I'm asking you this question so that you can comment and get thinking about this as well, because this will really help you understand why a holistic approach to hormones is essential, and why things like exercise is essential, and drinking water is essential, and a whole food diet is essential. So who's sending the message? And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to answer Mary's question about products that the US have. The US have a lot of products that have hormones in them. And the TGA in Australia will not let the non-medical profession sell hormonal products. You won't get melatonin, which is a hormone. You won't get progesterone. You won't get any hormonal products that are actual hormones in them over the counter or for retail sale. So yeah, we won't. Okay, so the question, who's sending the message? Yeah, so some of the answers: pituitary gland. So the brain, so the pituitary gland is located in the brain. So the brain is telling us to secrete hormones. Yeah, absolutely. Pituitary, thyroid, the brain tells the thyroid, so not the other way around. And all glands to and from major organs. Yes, so so if you come down to the micro level, one gland is telling is sending out the messenger, but who's telling the gland? What is telling the gland? The hypothalamus. Yeah, the master gland, the pituitary gland. So in our medical kind of interpretation or medical definition, the brain is the master of the hormone, so the brain is the messenger. But if you move now into a more metaphysical, if you want to call it that, a more holistic approach, something is communicating with the brain as well. And so this question of who's sending the message is expanded. And if you are interested in this area of more metaphysical approach to health, holistic approach, and you guys are Oilers, so I presume that the mind-body aspect of health is very important to you as well. And so here we come into a conversation about, well, who's directing the brain? And one possible answer is that the mind, the soul, and something's communicating with us. So if anyone has looked into some of the biology of emotions, so I've got a reference down a little bit further into the biology of emotions, or the molecules of emotions, and how does an emotion become, like fear, become a gut pain, for example, or how does stress affect our kidneys, or our if we have a perceived threat, for example, we have a near accident, how does that thought or that fear, that emotion, become a flood of hormones in the body? And how does that happen? And so in some ways, yes, the hormones are a message from the brain to the body, because there's this process of balancing going on all the time. But also the hormones are our mind communicating with our body. They are the mind-body connection as well. So when considering hormonal balance, we can't ever forget our thoughts, our emotions, and the psychology associated with health as well. And it's really only in our Western culture that we really separate mind and body. In some traditional systems of medicine, systems of health, the mind and body are not separated. And so we find in this conversation about hormones and what they actually are and who's doing the communicating, that it opens up these questions about what's producing what. Because of course we also know that you can correct gut health, and that will improve hormonal health. So then we have body-mind going on as well. So I don't want to go into too much detail around that and overwhelm you too much, but I know some of you understand and are interested in this aspect, and it's something that we don't want to leave out in a conversation about hormones. So it will come back to that over and over. And so it's worth looking into if this is particularly an area that you're interested in. Those studying naturopathy, studying nutrition, studying hormones in any way, you'll really want to look at the mind-body connection as well, or psychoneuroimmunology, metaphysical aspects. And one of the most favourite movies that I've watched on this topic is called What the Bleep? What the Bleep Do We Know? It's a bit old now, it's been around a while, but it's a documentary that really delves into the science behind emotions and what happens in the body. So something to write down. What the bleep do we know? You might be able to get a hold of it. All right, so to carry on, let's just have a look at the endocrine system, because when we're talking about hormones, we're talking about the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is really all these glands that you can see on your screen that secrete and manage and balance hormones. So starting with the brain, the hypothalamus and the pituitary, definitely are considered the master glands for the rest, and I'll show you why in a second. Pineal, we don't know so much about. That doesn't mean that it isn't super, super important. We just haven't investigated it a lot yet, and I'm not going to talk about it tonight. Then we have the thyroid, absolutely essential. There's thyroid hormone receptors on every cell in our body. Thyroid health is absolutely critical to general health. Parathyroid sits right next to the thyroid. Then there's the thymus, relating to our immunity. Adrenals, which sit just above the kidneys. There's kidney hormones. There's pancreas, which looks after our blood sugar hormones, amongst other things. And then we get to our reproductive hormones, so the ovary, the uterus, and the testes. And there's a lot more. We know that fat, for example, adipose tissue secretes hormones. There's hormones in the skin. Vitamin D is considered a hormone, and so on. So this whole area of hormones is enormous and just doesn't cover reproductive hormones. So when we're talking about hormones, I just want to cover a couple of the key ones that are relevant to mainly the topics that you've said that you're interested in. And I just want to show them here to you so that you can see what they're called and where they're from. None of this information you need to remember necessarily, but it'll help to explain some of the concepts that we're discussing a little bit later as well. You'll see at the top of your screen, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone comes from the pituitary gland and talks to the thyroid gland. Same as the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone, which relate to a woman's cycle. Men also secrete these hormones. They come from the pituitary again, and they regulate our cycle. So FSH is in the first half of our cycle, relating to the follicle, where the follicle is released, and luteinizing hormone is the second half of the cycle, where potentially we have an egg fertilized, and that needs to be taken care of there. So I've highlighted in yellow the ones that I want you to look particularly at, but you can see that there's a ton of others. Prolactin's another huge one, relating to fertility and stress, actually, growth hormone, oxytocin, and so on. But let's have a look at dopamine, melatonin, and thyroxine. Dopamine coming from the hypothalamus, another one of those mood hormones, particularly related to eating disorders and addictions, that one. Melatonin is from the pineal gland, and melatonin regulates our night and day, amongst other things, our night and day. And thyroxine comes directly from the thyroid gland, or the thyroxine comes from the thyroid gland and regulates the metabolism in the body. And then we have a couple more that I want to highlight. Glucocorticoids, for example, cortisol, which we have it's a stress hormone, which we've heard a lot about, comes from the adrenal cortex, or from the adrenals. Then we have androgens, like testosterone, comes from the adrenal cortex as well as the testes. Adrenaline, or epinephrine, which is known in the United States as epinephrine, comes from the adrenals. And noradrenaline. Adrenaline and noradrenaline work with each other and both come from the adrenals. And then we have our reproductive hormones, estrogens, progesterone, and our androgens. And these come from the ovarian follicle. So that's the beginning of the egg. The corpus luteum, which is after the follicle is released, the egg, and from placenta, amongst other things. Estrogens can also come from fat, making it really difficult to balance hormones. So there's an interaction there as well. And then we have insulin and glucagon, which come from the pancreas and regulate our blood sugars. So very, very busy, our hormonal system. Just a couple more. Cholecystokinin, or CCK, is a hormone that comes from our digestive system. So it's an exocrine hormone, and it helps regulate appetite, as do ghrelin and leptin. So if you're dealing with obesity, if you were interested in thyroid and weight, some of you were in your comments, then the hormones to investigate would be potentially cholecystokinin, but also ghrelin and leptin, because these ones really interfere with weight loss, and can be interrupted because of fat production especially around the middle of the body. Questions? So sorry, I haven't looked at your comments for a bit. Yep, Bruce Lipton, I've got that book for you to have a look at, The Biology of Belief. The environment's very important. Somebody's interested in PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And then does overactive thyroid relate in any way to uterine fibroids? Most likely. I'll get to thyroid more, so underactive thyroid actually. Now, I really want to ask you to, as a starting point, to really identify what's normal, because a lot of us have forgotten. And in our culture, we kind of have these new normals, like period pain is normal. It's not normal. And having hot flushes at menopause is normal. And there's quite a big difference between what's common and what's normal. And I talk about this each time I talk with you, but I want you to be able to recognize that there is a normal, and it's not always typically what's common out there and what we kind of expect and put up with and think is tolerated, what we have to tolerate when we don't. So I'm asking you the question then. So, for example, what's a normal menstrual cycle? Give me some feedback on what is a normal menstrual cycle. And you can add in there, what's a normal puberty? What's a normal menopause? Get your typing away. Give me some feedback. What's a normal menstrual cycle? Ladies, you have one every month. No pain. No pain. You're absolutely right. No pain. It's not normal to have pain. You don't have to put up with that. Pain is always a signal from the body that something's not right. No bloating. Yes. So bloat-free. Monthly regularity. So that would be 28-day cycle within a day or so. Anything longer than sort of 30 days over many months is irregular. Bleeding 3 to 5 to 7 days, light to medium. I mean, a normal period can be quite heavy on the first day or so, particularly for fertile women. It definitely decreases as you get close to your 40s. Let me just see your comments again. Sorry, I've got to scroll up a bit. No bloating, no blood clots. Yeah, nice bright red color, not too much blackness or brownness in the menstrual flow. 28-day cycle. No inflammation. No fluid retention. No flooding, definitely. No breast tenderness, exactly. No crazy moods. No spotting. Happy skin. Exactly. Yeah, same. And so what about menopause? Ladies, I know there's men in the audience, but so men, you could actually pipe in here and add what's normal for a stress response, for example. What's normal for blood sugars? What is normal? Is it normal to get the 3:30 itis, 3 p.m. itis, and need chocolate or coffee? No, it's not normal. No headaches. Yeah, headaches is pain. Pain is a message. Pain is lots of different messages. Migraines with periods are not normal. There can be various different reasons for that occurring, so it's not always simple, but they're not normal. Fantastic. So you get a sense that we have these assumptions about, a teenager with acne, that's normal, or a menopausal woman with insomnia or with migraines or dryness or anything. is kind of to be expected, but it's not. We put up with too much. We put up with things that we don't have to put up with, and then don't take action. So the key here is to address what the body is telling us. It's that beautiful language of the body that we have, and I sometimes, of course, it's very difficult because sorry, I just read a question and then lost my train of thought. Sometimes it's very difficult because what we are putting up with is something we feel we don't have control over. So, and that is the case for many of us. We don't have the information or the knowledge we need to take the actions that will get us well again. And that may be because we just haven't learned about nutrition, or we have stress that we don't know how to manage. But there is also a whole other level of things occurring. We live in a society that has cultural conditioning, and there are, let's call them metaphysical components to particularly female reproductive issues. And that may be because of the what some people call a patriarchal society that we live in, where our values are perhaps leaning more towards valuing masculine qualities over feminine qualities, and that can be in males and females. And so for a lot of women, becoming female and becoming a woman and menstruating, all of that process is a grief and a trauma. And then again, at the end of the cycle in menopause, when women start to they start to become less visible, supposedly, less perhaps traditionally sexy or traditionally attractive. And so issues of grief and change and transformation, and that's actually a great oil to consider, is transformation during the puberty and during menopause, because they are transformative times in our life. So keep in mind that there is a whole nother level of understanding that we need to gather in order to be able to really address hormonal issues, and as I mentioned, particularly reproductive hormones. And some people believe that autoimmune conditions such as endometriosis and Hashimoto's thyroiditis and some of these other things, yes, there's a big gut component, but in the metaphysical side of things, there's also this perhaps you'd call it not really being happy with the self component as well. So I'm not diagnosing anything here. I'm not being your doctor or your health professional. I'm just encouraging you to look into researching some of these things so you can be more empowered. Just your comments. It can be a good thing to be invisible. Okay, I guess so, Joe. Most of us don't really like being visible, though, but it has its upsides on occasion. Lupus, in a metaphysical sense, well, lupus is a bit beyond what I'm talking about today. It's not particularly a hormonal condition, but it is a autoimmune condition, and there's definitely a metaphysical or a psychoneuroimmunological aspect to autoimmune conditions, as I believe there are to all conditions. And so, Sandra, I would definitely look into that in your own research. Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, Donna. Yeah. I can't see the rest of your comment. You're probably typing really fast. Okay, so, oh my gosh, look at the time. I hope you're having fun and this is interesting for you. As you know, this is part 1. I think we're going to have part 2 and part 3 and part 4 and part 5 to be able to cover this topic. So let me keep going. Let me know if you're enjoying this and learning something, because I really want you to have this bigger picture perspective. Okay, so I want to go through some of the whole body factors that affect hormone function, because if you're trying to help someone, and I know all of you are, then just giving somebody an oil for a symptom is just like giving a drug for a symptom. And it may be helpful, but more than likely it won't be enough because we haven't addressed the bigger picture. You can't give that micro solution when the macro solutions haven't been addressed. For example, you can have temperature problems, elevated temperature, hot flushes, you want to call them, night sweats, and that could be related to 10 different things. It can be related to liver function, adrenal function, estrogen levels, progesterone levels, but it can also be related to water and fluid intake. Our bodies regulate regulate temperature or there's a link between fluid and temperature regulation. So if you're dehydrated, your body will struggle to regulate its temperature. So number one, go for the basic things first. If somebody has temperature control problems and they are not drinking enough water, then start there. That's the place to start. So having said that, there are several things that are particularly instrumental in unbalancing our hormones. And I want to address those one at a time. We may only get to address one tonight, so watch this space. We will cover it in a follow-up session. So first of all, stress. And I put stress first because it's probably the biggest one. And I'm talking here about stress with a capital S, which basically means not just psychological stress, but physical stress. So for example, being dehydrated is stressful to the body. And so it's a physical stress. Being cold, being nutrient deficient, being in an inflamed state. So having inflammation in the body is a physical stress. And then we have psychological or emotional stress, which could be, being too busy, never slowing down, being under pressure, being unhappy, talking to yourself all the time in a negative way. These are the stresses that occur to us on a daily basis. So I'm just reading your comments. Water with lemon or grapefruit, love it. Grief. I don't know what you're referring to, Sharon, in terms of grief, but grief is particularly, grief has a lot of components to it, which includes anger and sadness and a few other things. If you study grief, which I encourage you to do if that's your favorite subject, there's 5 key emotions in grief. But in metaphysical understanding, grief relates to the lungs. So not so much related to hormones. And yes, so when you have a breakdown in your health, then you start to learn about the things that you're doing and that can be influential on your health. So first of all, regarding stress, I want to give you an explanation of how stress impacts so that you can see why a holistic approach needs to be considered. And there's something called the HPA axis, which basically an acronym that stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal. And so we had all those glands earlier that secrete hormones. They're all there individually, but it's a system. The endocrine system all works together, and there's these feedback loops which regulate. So that means that if your body secretes a lot of something and it doesn't need any more, a message goes back, and then the message to produce more of that hormone gets switched off, which is this sort of self-regulating system that occurs, and it works so well when you give it the environment it needs to operate well. But for example, in the case of stress, and you'll see here a sort of an outline of this hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal feedback loop that is happening all the time. It's absolutely normal. But if you continue to overproduce stress hormones, continually challenge the hypothalamus, continually have stress, then these things start to wear out. These processes start to wear out. And then the body starts to adapt to try and manage us. The body is always trying to take care of us. Every symptom is actually for our benefit, even though we may not think that. It's the body's intelligence trying to cope with what we're doing to it. And if we're not listening to the early symptoms, and we don't listen to the middle symptoms, and then we don't listen to the big symptoms, we get breakdowns. And often by then it's way too late. So we want to listen to those early messages and get back on track as much as we can. In a similar way, there are other axes in the body. This is the HPT axis, which is the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid. So they are working together as well. And then you also have the hypothalamus, pituitary, gonads. They are also working in harmony. And so these are all happening at the same time in our bodies, helping to maintain optimal function at any given moment. So within all of those organs or glands that are in the endocrine system, we have some that are working together in these axes, like the HPT, HPA, HPG. But then, of course, they're all happening at the same time. And you can see from this a little bit overwhelming slide, don't freak out, but you'll see this is the process of manufacturing steroidal hormones in our body. And we're pretty much talking about cortisone, stress hormones, estrogen, progesterone, all these kinds of things, which are steroidal hormones. Then they start to compete with each other if there's an imbalance. So if we look at the HPA axis, it doesn't operate on its own, and it uses the same raw materials. As you can see on this slide, the same raw materials make progesterone, as make testosterone, as make estrogen. So if we have an oversupply of stress, if we're stressed all the time, then our cholesterol and our pregnenolone, which is the precursor, can favor cortisol production and cortisone production because we're stressed all the time and we don't want to fall over dead. The body wants us to survive. So it'll produce this cortisol and the cortisone at the expense of progesterone, at the expense of testosterone, at the expense of these other things that are going on in the body. So sometimes we think our problem, and if you go to the doctor, it might be, oh, you've got a progesterone problem. You don't have enough progesterone. But if you investigate that further, the problem isn't not enough progesterone. The problem is too much cortisone from too much stress. And so we need to take the whole picture into account. You can see here that steroidal hormones, raw material, is beautiful, beautiful cholesterol. We've demonized cholesterol in our culture in the last 40 or 50 years, but it's absolutely essential for the production of our stress hormones and our reproductive hormones. And so this is why some of the cholesterol drugs, cholesterol lowering drugs, can have these side effects, because it interferes with the production of some of these hormones. Another one of which is vitamin D, by the way. And so one of the concepts that is quite interesting is that, does our body increase cholesterol when we're stressed because we need more of the raw material to make more of the hormone? And then what happens when we take something that's artificially lowering our cholesterol? Are we upsetting the body's ability to self-regulate and produce that cortisol that it needs to give us that stress resilience and the flight or fright response? And so, drugs have their place, but I often think of them as a down the track resort rather than a first resort. So what that concept is that I've just explained to you is it has a name, pregnenolone steal. Basically, it means that the body will favor the production of stress hormones over the production of reproductive hormones, because surviving stress is more important than reproducing at that time. And I think that makes way sense. And then the books that I was, sorry about these images. They're not the best, but I wanted you to, if you're interested in stress hormones, the thoughts and how they impact our bodies, how, I guess it's the whole metaphysical thing, the how psychoneuroimmunology, all of that stuff. Then there's two particular authors that are absolutely exceptional in this area. Candace Pert, who is an incredible she's actually dead now, neuroscientist, I think she was, who's done, I don't know if she won a Nobel Prize, but if she hasn't or didn't, then she should. And then there's stuff by Bruce Lipton, who is a biologist and has discovered all this amazing stuff that comes back to the soul, if you want to call it that, the mind, our higher levels of action. So I think that we're getting close to ending, and what I want to do by way of summary is to give you something to go home with, give you something to utilize as information that can be helpful from people. So by way of summarizing and by way of helping you, I'd like you to just think about what we've been talking about tonight, which has been things like the pregnenolone steal, the HPA axis. By the way, we don't say adrenal exhaustion anymore. That name has been debunked. It's actually HPA dysfunction is the technical term. So now you know what HPA means. We've talked about stress and what's normal. We've talked about lots of the hormones that we're talking about here, such as follicle stimulating hormone and so on. We've looked at the organs that are part of the endocrine system. So please type in for me any aha moments, any take-home actions that you have come up with so far, any new insights that you have got from tonight. And of course, I mentioned all those oils and oil blends and oil infused products as well. So hopefully some of those were more interesting for you as well. Drinking water to combat the sweats. Yes, it's worth a try, Jenny. Stress interferes with hormone production. Yes, absolutely. Look after yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stress being and affecting other hormonal issues is a biggie. So something that we need, and that's why I love all those adaptogen herbs and those higher level oils that work on our master glands, if you like, our master levels, the spiritual ones, we could call them, really helping to balance out the HPA axis. Nutrition is key, and we haven't even talked about that yet, Sandra, but thank you for picking that up. Breathing deeply is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do for a stress, for decreasing, especially breathing out, your out breath. If you can elongate the out breath, you're reducing those chemicals, stress chemicals in the body. What the blip? It's actually what the bleep, Irina. What the bleep, BLEEP. And it's fantastic if you're interested in all this stuff. Fantastic movie. It's actually got Candace Pert in there, I think. Stress away, we didn't even mention that, but that's fantastic. You can imagine already you're thinking, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? Absolutely. And real foods, exercise, yeah, real foods, absolutely. The feelings kit, yes, big part of what you're wanting to help people with, big part of it. Don't just go for the progescences and the dragon times and the rest of it. Think holistically, think big picture. Sacred frankincense, absolutely, Shahida. Yeah, okay, fantastic. Yeah, I hope that I've given you a little bit of theory, a little bit of young living, and given you some things to think about for your own well-being as well as others. So I'm just going to stop recording now, and because we have got to the 8 o'clock mark, and I can still answer a few more questions, but I just would like to end the recording. Thanks everyone for paying attention. For those who are listening to this recording, please look out for part 2 in a future edition.